Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome into the show and welcome on in. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles now. My name is Chase Sr., and as always, no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, thank you so much for making today's show a part of your day. And if you're a little bit late and you're watching the program on Thursday, that's fine as well because we're bringing you Elite Eagles coverage every single day year-round. Coming up here on the show, we have an Eagles offensive coordinator update. Philadelphia signed a sneaky good running back, and I think the Eagles could have plans for this player to potentially be their fullback of the future. Of course, that can be offensive coordinator dependent as well, but over the last couple of years, the Eagles have utilized the fullback position pretty well in the run game, and the Eagles also signing additional players. Since that Eagles loss to the Niners in the wild card round, Howie Roseman ain't sleeping. He's been very busy. I do want to begin here, though. We're closing in on another subscriber milestone, and I want all of you to help us get there. And you're a winner at the end of the day, because if you hit that subscribe button, you get great coverage right here on YouTube from us truly. So we're 33 people away from 143,000 subscribers. And if you want Eagles content that's informative, insightful, entertaining, thought-provoking, where you have a voice, join the community, join the movement, and lock us in and hit that sub button. Diana Rossini, NFL insider for The Athletic, with this report here on this Wednesday afternoon, on this January 14th, that the Philadelphia Eagles have begun reaching out to offensive coordinator candidates regarding that vacancy after Kevin Patullo was fired on Tuesday. And how about these two names popping up? Former Dolphins coach Mike McDaniel and former New York Giants head coach Brian Daboll are at the top of the Eagles list, sources say. Let's first talk about Brian Daboll here, experienced play caller who oversaw top 10 offenses while being the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills, and he helped to develop Josh Allen early in his career. And when Josh Allen played his college football at Wyoming, he was far from the player who he is today. And today, he's a perennial MVP candidate and maybe the most talented and best quarterback in the National Football League. But when he got drafted by the Bills, he was inaccurate. Throughout college, he was a sub 60% guy. He was still big. He was athletic. He had a big arm. But Brian Daboll helped to refine his skill set. I also like the track record of Daboll and who he's learned under. He coached under Bill Belichick. He coached under Nick Saban. He also has a lot of familiarity with this Eagles organization, from the offensive players on the roster to the coaching staff. He was Jalen Hurts' offensive coordinator while at Alabama. That was the year that Hurts got benched in the national championship for Tua Tagovailoa, but they overlapped. Daboll also coached Devontae Smith during his time at Alabama and Saquon Barkley with the New York Giants. That's your QB1. That's one of your top wide receivers, and that's your RB1 right there. And then Daboll worked with Nick Sirianni when they overlapped with their respective coaching careers while with the Kansas City Chiefs. And Nick Sirianni has said this before, but he looks up to Daboll. Daboll is one of his mentors, so they already have a really good relationship. Daboll, of course, good first year with the New York Giants. Led them to a playoff win on the road against the Minnesota Vikings before getting dusted by the Eagles in the divisional round. That's when the Eagles got home field advantage there. And I like what he did with Daniel Jones that season. Now, after that, it didn't necessarily work out all that well, but sometimes guys are better as a coordinator as compared to a head coach. And if Brian Daboll wants to be a head coach once again, I imagine that's the case. He has an interview set with the Tennessee Titans for their open head coaching vacancy. Going to the Eagles is a great opportunity for him to coach a loaded offense that next year will be a Super Bowl contender for an organization that has been a breeding ground for front office executives who want to elevate and go somewhere else and maybe be a GM or have a higher title in a front office, for a coach who's looking to become a head coach, or they've mastered player development as well. And then we flip the page to Mike McDaniel, different offensive mind than Brian Daboll. And he would be much more of an extravagant hire as compared to Daboll. Daboll would run a scheme that I think the Eagles would prefer. McDaniel, on the other hand, from that Kyle Shanahan coaching tree. The Eagles also have familiarity with Mike McDaniel. When he was with the Niners as an assistant under Shanahan, the Eagles interviewed McDaniel to be their offensive coordinator in 2020. That was the final year for Doug Peterson. Now, Doug Peterson never ceded play calling duties, and he continued to call plays that year. But the Eagles looked at McDaniel as a guy who they wanted to bring in to add some flavor to Doug Peterson's offense, which grew a little bit stale after winning that Super Bowl in 2017. If McDaniel wants to be a head coach again, the Eagles can really help him. The Dolphins, awful organization. They kind of backstabbed Mike McDaniel, according to his best friend. They told him that he was going to come back, and then they ended up firing him after McDaniel played a role in their search for a general manager. Eagles would never do that. Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman, probably the best owner-GM combo in the sport. And for those of you who were impressed by Kyle Shanahan's offense on Sunday and what that Niners team did with less talent compared to Philadelphia, you might like the possibility of the Eagles hiring McDaniel. In 2023, when he was the head coach of the Miami Dolphins with a lesser quarterback than Jalen Hurts in Tua Tagovailoa, the Dolphins were number 2 as far as their scoring offense, number 1 in total offense. His offense dynamic, has a really good run game. The Eagles are a team that wants to run the football, especially behind this offensive line, which does need to get better and healthier with Saquon Barkley. The issue with McDaniel's offense, which could cause some problems for quarterback Jalen Hurts, a lot of it requires in-breaking routes, crossers, throws over the middle, anticipatory throws. And Jalen Hurts hasn't always been confident with that. Now, when he has been asked to do that, I actually think Hurts has fared well. So I think it's up to Hurts to get out of his comfort zone. But those are some thoughts there on Mike McDaniel. 2 other candidates who are popping up as possibilities for Philadelphia here, according to reports. Cliff Kingsbury, former Commanders offensive coordinator. Kevin Stefanski, former Browns head coach. For Stefanski, 2-time coach of the year with the Cleveland Browns, Philly area native, so he'd have some local ties. He went to Penn. He was a former Eagles intern way back in the day. His play-action passing game and zone running scheme is something that I think the Eagles would prefer to run. But it would be different from Nick Sirianni, which I like. Last year, before they elevated Kevin Patullo and internally promoted him, I had said, I want the Eagles to go outside of the organization. I think it's always valuable to get some fresh ideas and maybe marry that with some of the things that you like to do from a conceptual standpoint. For Cliff Kingsbury, I'm not the biggest fan of Kingsbury and this offense, but the Eagles did interview him before hiring Kellen Moore prior to the 2024 season, so the previous interest has certainly been there. In 2024, when Jaden Daniels was a rookie and the Commanders made that run to the NFC Championship game before getting bounced by the Eagles as the Birds put up 55 points on the Commies. The Commanders were top 5 in EPA per play. Hurts does have experience playing in this offensive system. He did it at Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley, who is also a Mike Leach disciple. So with that, let's pop up today's poll question here. We're just getting started on the show. Don't go anywhere. Who is your top choice to be the Eagles offensive coordinator? Let me know. Drop me a name down below in the comment section right now. Still to come here on Eagles Now. Continue to hit that thumbs up icon, like the video, share your comments, subscribe to the channel, and interact down in the comment section. The Eagles signed a sneaky good running back, and the Eagles also signed additional players. We'll get to that here in just a moment. But first, today's Philadelphia Eagles Now is brought to you by Prize Picks. Whether you're starting a new routine to kick off 2026 or you're making player picks for the first time, trying something new can be hard. But in life and on Prize Picks, it always feels good to be right, doesn't it? With high-pressure playoff matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every night, the action never stops, and Prize Picks lets you take control. New feature alert. Prize Picks now has early payouts. If your player gets off to a hot start, you now have the option to cash out of those winnings before the game even finishes. You can also find your community on Prize Picks. With the new social feeds feature, you can share Prize Picks with your friends and copy lineups from winners with a single click. Copy lineups you like or use them as inspiration for your own picks. You can even follow Prize Picks partners like us and tail or fade our picks with just one click. 2-pick power play for some playoff action here. Josh Allen, more than a half rushing or receiving touchdown against the Denver Broncos. What a special that is. And then Puka Nacua more than a half rushing or receiving touchdown. That Rams passing game obviously goes right through him. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, Eagles making a couple of roster moves here in the aftermath of that ugly, heartbreaking loss against the Niners. The Eagles signed a running back, adding former Kansas City Chief Carson Steele to a futures contract. I actually like this move. He played his college football at Ball State, and then he transferred to UCLA. UDFA, who signed with the Chiefs as an undrafted free agent following the 2024 draft. 6 foot, 228 pounds. He can pack a punch with how he plays the game of football and how he runs. And with the Chiefs, he was known to be, especially going into his rookie year, a training camp and preseason darling. And my first thought when I saw that the Eagles added him to the roster is Philadelphia signing Carson Steele to be their future fullback. Of course, this can be very offensive coordinator dependent, but in that Kyle Shanahan system, if you want to go after a Mike McDaniel or you want to go after somebody else from that tree, they utilize the fullback. And we saw how Kyle Juszczyk was utilized by Kyle Shanahan. I mean, Kyle Shanahan did a better job of scheming open Kyle Juszczyk than Kevin Patullo did for Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown. And in this Eagles running game, they're a fan of utilizing the fullback. Last year, they really started to incorporate Ben Van Sumeren a lot during the 2024 season. Unfortunately for him, he ended up tearing his ACL, and then on the very first play of the 2025 season, kickoff coverage against the Dallas Cowboys, he got hurt again. So last year, they went to Corey Blasingame, and they added him and utilized him all throughout the NFL playoffs. This year, they used a little Kylan Granson, Cam Latu at the fullback spot, but Van Sumeren, really good athlete, now has injury concerns. Cam Latu, a converted tight end, who I think would be a solid fullback if he continues to work there. But then you have Carson Steele, who does have experience playing the fullback spot. Didn't register any stats in 2025 for Kansas City, but he did get some run in 2024 with the Chiefs en route to that team making it to the Super Bowl before they got shellacked by the Eagles. 56 carries, 183 yards last year, 3.3 yards per carry, 7 catches for 26 yards. But he was a Pro Bowl alternate who finished behind Patrick Ricard of the Baltimore Ravens. He's the second best fullback in the game behind Kyle Juszczyk in Pro Bowl voting. And look at the utilization of Steele by Andy Reid. 190 snaps in the backfield, 2 snaps at tight end, 1 snap in the slot, 6 out wide. He also returned 5 kicks. I'd say that the Eagles' kick return game wasn't all that good this season, and so they're going to give Carson Steele a long look as a backup running back, potentially as this team's future fullback, and I'm excited to see what he could do potentially for the Eagles here. These players also being signed to future contracts. We talked about some of these players getting signed by the Eagles on Monday or Tuesday earlier this week. Safety Andre Sam, tight end E.J. Jenkins, offensive tackle John Ojukwu, fullback Carson Steele. So they're listing him as a fullback here. Linebacker Chance Campbell, who a lot of players on the 53-man roster really like, and they said that he's one of the better practice squad and scout team players that they've gone up against. He's a speedy, physical linebacker who can pack a punch. And the likes of Jordan Mailata, Cam Jurgens, Saquon Barkley raved about Chance Campbell. Defensive back Tariq Castro Fields, wide receiver Danny Gray, defensive tackle Gabe Hall, defensive back Brandon Johnson also signing 2 future contracts. A lot of Eagles players are high on Brandon Johnson as well. Center Jake Majors, who the Eagles signed during the season. He was a pretty good player for the Texas Longhorns. Offensive tackle Holland Pierce, and good old steady wide receiver Quez Watkins signing a future contract with the Eagles as well. He sneakily was on the practice squad for the Eagles pretty much the entire season. All right, don't forget to hit that subscribe button anytime there's breaking news. Anytime there's something developing around the Eagles, I always have you covered right here on Philadelphia Eagles Now. Awesome audience so far. More than 500 people watching live. We're up to 109 likes. Continue to hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. I'm telling you right now, we're bringing the heat all off season long with top-notch Eagles coverage. If you want to be a part of our mailbag, by the way, that will be segment number 4. Do me a favor. If you have a question for me, if you have a hot take, within your comment, use the hashtag Eagles, or if you send in a super chat, you're guaranteed to get on the show. Use the hashtag Eagles or send in a super chat, and we'll get those questions answered here on the show. If we don't get enough questions, we don't do a mailbag, and we won't do a mailbag, but if you get those questions in, we'll do a mailbag right here, live on Philadelphia Eagles Now. All right, coming up next here on the show, I'm really excited about this, and I teased earlier in the week that this was coming up. I'm going to give you my perfect Philadelphia Eagles offseason plan. This will also serve as a great guide for what you can expect for the Eagles this offseason. That's going to be segment number 2, and we can hop right into it here. Shout out to the recent commenter club. I see Yo Vince down in the chat, Johnny Evans, Gene Holcomb, Big Mountain, my guy Potion, Mike Nintendo Master. What is up with everybody? We're so glad all of you are here. All right, segment number 2. Let's get to it. Hey there, welcome into the show. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now. My name is Chase Sr. I'm really excited for what we have cooking up on today's program. I put together my perfect Philadelphia Eagles offseason plan. The moves that Howie Roseman needs to make to get the Eagles back to being a Super Bowl contender. But first, I want to begin here. The offseason is here. It's underway for the Eagles, and our coverage, our videos have been taken off. I think a lot of people were fatigued by what transpired with the Eagles this year, and I think a lot of that had to do with knowing that the Eagles offense had a ceiling with Kevin Patullo. He's now gone, and this offseason coming up for the Eagles is pivotal, and here I got you covered on the show. We're going to bring you the latest Eagles news, rumors, and reports. We're going to give you great NFL free agency coverage. I'll be at the NFL Combine. I'll be at the Super Bowl bringing you some NFL draft content as well. Anytime there's trade buzz around the Eagles, we'll talk about that too. And we're 33 subscribers away from 143,000. So lock us in and hit that sub button. Let's start here. Good foundation as we set the table for what we're going to get into here on the show. The Eagles offseason profile. So right now, the base salary cap for all teams across the NFL is $295.5 million. That is the amount of money that teams can allocate toward their roster. But that number, I can almost guarantee you, is going to go up. Once the NFL tallies the revenue generated from the 2025 season, the NFL is going to look at these numbers and say, we made bank again. Business continues to be booming. And so I would imagine that the base salary cap is well over $300 million. And that just continues the trajectory of the business path that the NFL has been on because it's continued to go up and up and up over the last several years. The Eagles as an organization will have $20.2 million in cap space as of right now, having not made any roster moves. That is 19th in the NFL, but we know that Howie Roseman is going to make moves to open up some more cap space, I would imagine, because he's so good at that. And in the NFL draft, you look ahead to that, Philadelphia slated to have 8 picks in the 2026 NFL draft, which is happening this year in Pittsburgh in April. You look at those draft selections, some awesome draft capital for the Eagles. They can either use this at their disposal or they can use these picks in a trade. They have their own first-round pick. They have their own second-round pick. They have a third-round pick from the New York Jets. That's 68th overall from the Hassan Reddick trade. They have a projected compensatory pick in the 3rd round. They have their own 4th. They have a projected comp pick in the 4th. A 5th from either Atlanta or San Francisco from the Niners that would be a part of the Bryce Huff trade. And then they have a projected compensatory pick in the 5th round as well. As far as my Eagles offseason needs, they obviously need to hire an offensive coordinator and get that spot right. I would also look at the Eagles rebuilding the offensive line as a big point of emphasis this offseason. We'll get more into that here in just a moment. Offensive tackle, interior offensive line. Pass rusher in need for the Eagles. Cornerback 2 alongside Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Safety, what happens with Reed Blankenship? Andrew Makuba, been an injury-prone player in college, and then he broke his ankle against the Dallas Cowboys. Wide receiver. What happens at wide receiver 3? What happens if the Eagles trade away A.J. Brown? And then tight end, because Dallas Goedert is set to be a free agent. I have seen a lot of you talk about Jake Elliott, and a lot of you have said that kicker is a need for the Eagles going into 2026. I agree, but Jake Elliott is the second highest paid kicker in the NFL. If the Eagles were to cut bait and move off of him, they'd have to eat about $10 million. And I don't know if they're willing to do that at the kicker position. They might give Jake Elliott one last chance to get on the right path. And this year, it was the worst year of his career, and this comes after a 2024 season in which he was also rocky and then got it together for the playoffs. That extra point miss against the Niners ended up really costing Philadelphia. They lost by 4. They drove down inside the 25. If Jake Elliott didn't doink that extra point, all the Eagles would have had to do is kick a field goal to force overtime, and I would have liked the Eagles' chances to beat the Niners because they were the deeper team than San Francisco if there was the extra period played. So this year, Jake Elliott, 20 of 27, career low field goal percentage of 74.1%. He was perfect on kicks of 30 to 39 yards, 6 of 6, but he was 6 of 10 from 40 to 49 yards and only 4 of 8 from 50 plus. He used to be automatic on some of these deep kicks. That is no longer the case, and I do wonder if the Eagles make a change at the kicker spot, but again, it would cost a lot of money. Then you flip the page to the list of the Eagles' 2026 free agents. 20 of them this year. Tight end Dallas Goedert, offensive tackle Fred Johnson, interior offensive lineman Brett Toth, quarterback Sam Howell, edge rusher Josh Uche, edge rusher Azeez Ojulari, long snapper Charlie Hewlett, edge rusher Obu Okoronkwo, running back A.J. Dillon, linebacker Nakobe Dean, pass rusher Jalen Phillips, tight end Grant Calcaterra, wide receiver Jahan Dotson, safety Reed Blankenship, safety Marcus Epps, punter Braden Mann, cornerback Adoree Jackson, pass rusher Brandon Graham, tight end Kylan Granson, and offensive lineman Matt Pryor. Now coming up next, what I said that we were going to get into. My guide for what Howie Roseman has to do to perfect and ace this upcoming Eagles offseason. But I do want to tell you about this deal thanks to our friends at Fanatics. We always have deals for the legends and the real ones who watch this show. This Eagles t-shirt hoodie was $60. It is now on sale for just $42. All sizes available, but that discount lasts as supplies last. And you have to use that link in order to get $18 off on this Nike t-shirt hoodie here. It's chatsports.com/Eagles hoodie shirt. My perfect offseason plan for the Eagles. Point of emphasis number 1, you have to get the offensive coordinator spot right. And you have to get this offense playing up to their level. They averaged 9.5 points per game in the second half of games this year. They had 6 games this season in which they did not score in the second half. There were 2 games in which Jalen Hurts did not complete a pass in the second half. The job of an offensive coordinator is to put his players in a position to succeed. Kevin Patullo did not do that this season. He lacked play calling feel. He lacked play calling sequencing. And outside of the opening script, he was pretty much awful. I have my 5 favorite offensive coordinator candidates. And we've talked a lot about these coordinators here on the show. Brian Daboll, former head coach of the New York Giants. Todd Monken, still currently technically employed by the Baltimore Ravens, but has been their OC the last couple of years under John Harbaugh. But with the Ravens firing Harbaugh, I would imagine that the new coach brings in his new OC. Mike McDaniel, the former head coach of the Miami Dolphins. Kevin Stefanski, the former head coach of the Cleveland Browns. And then Nathan Scheelhaus. He is the pass game coordinator for the Rams. The Eagles actually interviewed him a couple of years ago when he was a little-known assistant at Iowa State. And in speaking of Jalen Hurts, I want to see an offensive coordinator get Jalen Hurts back on track. Statistically, Hurts had a pretty good year in 2025, but a lot of these numbers were empty. And obviously, offensive coordinator continuity would be great for Hurts because this will be his 11th coordinator in the last 11 years. But I think what the Eagles have to do is get the best candidate. Hurts this season completed under 65% of his passes for 3,200 yards, 33 total touchdowns and 6 picks with a quarterback rating of 98.5. He showed and has shown throughout his career he can play at an elite level. When he's had good coordinators, Shane Steichen, Kellen Moore, the Eagles have been to Super Bowls under both of those players. I saw a funny tweet the other day from Albert Breer, and he was talking about all the different OCs that Justin Herbert has had. And he mentioned Shane Steichen, Kellen Moore. Well, Jalen Hurts has made it to a Super Bowl with those two OCs. You get the offensive coordinator right, paired with this still fantastic Eagles defense. Even if they lose some players, the Eagles can get back to being a Super Bowl contender in 2026. Perfect offseason plan step number 2. Howie Roseman might need to rebuild this offensive line. And this is going to be a difficult task for Howie Roseman. And there's a couple of avenues in which he can go here. He can prioritize drafting offensive linemen high. Wouldn't surprise me if he does that. All throughout his Eagles tenure, he has put an emphasis on drafting offensive linemen high in the draft. There's also some internal moves that you can make. Landon Dickerson played center while at Alabama. Do you move Landon Dickerson from left guard to center and trade Cam Jurgens to a center-needy team for, let's say, a mid-round pick? You could also, this is a little bit risky, rely on getting healthier along the offensive line. Cam Jurgens not healthy this year. Lane Johnson not healthy this year. Landon Dickerson not healthy this season. And develop some of your young players who you drafted last year. Drew Kendall, Cam Williams, Miles Hinton, all selected in the 6th round, and we barely saw those players at all this year. What I wouldn't do if I'm the Eagles is overspend on offensive linemen in free agency. Offensive linemen are some of the worst players that you can sign in free agency. A lot of them are scheme dependent, and when they hit the market, you oftentimes have to overpay for those offensive linemen. And I don't want to see Howie Roseman go that route because I think that he can use that financial capital elsewhere. How about this? If the Eagles want to rebuild their offensive line this offseason, there's an affordable move out there that they can easily make, and they can reunite with the familiar face who is fantastic for this Eagles team in 2024 en route to them having the best running attack in the National Football League and this player having a career year. They could trade for Mekhi Becton. The Eagles should look into making this move. Mekhi Becton was miserable with the Chargers this year. He didn't like their offensive line coach. He didn't fit the scheme. He signed a 2-year, $20 million contract, so he would be affordable as far as what his salary would be, what the Eagles would be paying him. And we know that on this Eagles team, he works out. And he can elevate Cam Jurgens if you keep him. He's a great player to put alongside Lane Johnson. And sometimes players just work out with one specific team. And maybe that's the case for Mekhi Becton. That's a player that Howie Roseman should have never let leave the building. Tyler Steen was fine. He's just not Mekhi Becton, who has proven he's a better guard than offensive tackle. The Eagles also have to figure out what they're going to do with their pass rush. I love the development that we saw from Jalen Hunt. Nolan Smith might not put up gaudy numbers, but he's really important to what the Eagles do. And the Eagles have some big decisions to make here at the pass rusher spot, and this is a position that Howie Roseman is willing to invest in. The Eagles have 8 picks this year, all within the first 5 rounds, so that gives them flexibility if they want to make a trade, or they do have some money allocated that they could use toward a pass rusher this offseason. They could elect to re-sign Jalen Phillips. Jalen Phillips has played awesome football under Vic Fangio while with the Miami Dolphins and with the Eagles. He ended up being a game changer for that Eagles defense. From the time that they traded for Jalen Phillips, Philadelphia was the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL, giving up 2 touchdowns per game, 14.5 points per game. That's stellar. So the Eagles could elect to re-sign Jalen Phillips. There's also some trade candidates out there. I don't know if Max Crosby wants to play for the Las Vegas Raiders any longer. Max Crosby has sent out a couple of cryptic tweets. He would be a perfect player for this Eagles scheme, a perfect player for this city. This is a guy who plays with an unbelievable motor. He always empties the tank. He plays with great hustle. He has a great pass rush arsenal. He has been with one of the worst organizations in the National Football League since he came into the NFL. And the Raiders and him got into an argument at the end of the year where Max Crosby left the facility. And there's some bad blood brewing between these two parties because Crosby wanted to finish out the year. The Raiders wanted to sit him because of a knee injury that did require surgery. With Max Crosby, has had some injury problems over the last couple of years, but what a move that would be for Howie Roseman. Which coach are the Browns going to hire? And depending on that, is that coach going to want to keep Myles Garrett after he set the sack record that was in place since the early 2000s by Michael Strahan? Or will that coach want to trade away Myles Garrett to get multiple picks back so that they can rebuild very quickly? The Eagles have shown some interest in Myles Garrett in the past. Will they again? Last offseason, those rumors were hot. And then in free agency, the Eagles could go after a player like Trey Hendrickson. Getting a little bit older, was injured this past year, but in 2023 and in 2024, he had 17 and a half sacks in each of those seasons. No player in the NFL had more. Number 4, the Eagles have to prioritize some of their own players. And there are some contract extension eligible players who are focal points and anchors of this Eagles defense. Jordan Davis is up for a contract extension. He emerged as an all-pro caliber player this year, and he's so important inside the Eagles locker room. And with his personality, with his leadership, I don't think the Eagles are going to let a player like that go. He is under contract for one more year, but he's extension eligible, and you could get him at about 75% of market value if you sign him early compared to late. As far as that market value point, you could get Jalen Carter at a pretty affordable price. Jalen Carter is coming off an injury-plagued season. I'm a little bit worried about the shoulders. They might require off-season attention. But if you sign Jalen Carter now, before he balls out potentially in 2026, if he were to play really well this upcoming season, he could be in demand of $35 to $40 million. You might be able to get him at a more affordable rate right now. Punters are people too. Brain Man has been one of the best punters for the Eagles in the NFL over the last couple of years. I think it's very important that the Eagles bring him back. All those 3 and outs, he had to punt a lot. Hopefully that's not the case next year. I'd like to see the Eagles sign Reed Blankenship. I don't think he's going to break the bank, and I don't think the safety position is one where you want to overpay. I do think secondary continuity is good to have. And Reed Blankenship, good figure in the locker room too. And this is tough because Jalen Phillips is one of the best available edge rushers. If he doesn't break the bank, I'd be willing to bring back Jalen Phillips, although the injury problems and the history is a little bit concerning. Medically retired in college before coming back. And then at the NFL level, he's torn an ACL and Achilles. But we saw the impact that he had on the Eagles defense this season after that trade. What is the future of Nakobe Dean? I actually think the Eagles should let Nakobe Dean walk. It's unfortunate. I really like him as a player. He, too, is great for the Eagles culture. Very well respected. But I think it's going to be expensive. He's hurt a lot. And the Eagles have great depth at linebacker. You have Jahad Campbell. You have Jeremiah Trotter Jr. They could come at a fraction of the cost of Nakobe Dean. The Eagles also should look into drafting a cornerback too early and develop some of the young depth on this Eagles roster from the 2025 draft class who, outside of Jahad Campbell and Andrew Makuba, we really didn't see any of these rookies. Mac McWilliams, Ty Robinson, the 3 offensive linemen drafted. Let's see what they can do. The Eagles still have a lot of talent as far as starters, but they don't have a lot of talent as far as depth. That's where drafting and developing becomes really important from a cost-controlled standpoint. As far as that corner, too, will the Eagles draft the corner like Avion Terrell in the first round? His brother, A.J. Terrell, really good corner for the Atlanta Falcons. I think that Avion, who Chip is very familiar with because Chip went to Clemson, could be a great choice for the Eagles. He's very aggressive. He tackles well. He has really good ball skills. And I think that he would be a good scheme fit for Vic Fangio. And then this is a move that I would absolutely love for the Eagles to make. And if you do this, you're not going to draft an Avion Terrell. If you let Dallas Goedert go, trade up for Kenyon Sadiq. He is one of the better tight end prospects that has entered the NFL draft over the last few years. This guy is an exceptional athlete. He's fast. He's physical. He is explosive. I think that he has room to be a really good blocker at the next level, and you can get very creative with how you utilize him. This past year for Oregon, en route to the college football playoff, targeted 71 times, caught 51 passes, 560 yards, 8 touchdowns, 6 drops. A little bit of a concern there. Has to shore up the hands. But I think that he could be a better pro than a college player because I think that he could be utilized a lot inside this Eagles offense. You look at the career body of work, really started to come on the last 2 years, but I think he's rounding into form into being an exceptional player, and he's going to test very, very well. That could be your future tight end if you do move on from Dallas Goedert, and this is an Eagles organization that has always put an emphasis on the tight end position. So grade my perfect offseason plan. A, B, C, D, or F. What do you think about it? That's what I want Howie Roseman to do to ace this upcoming offseason. Super chat coming in from James J30T. Keep up the good work, James. Thank you for that. Do appreciate it. And I hope everybody out there is really enjoying the coverage. About 550 people watching live right now. So glad all of you are here. We will be doing a mailbag segment number 4. So get those questions in. Hashtag Eagles. Send in a super chat. If we get enough questions, we'll do another segment. If not, we'll just sign off. Coming up next, want to look at the top free agent targets for the Eagles. The best players who the Eagles could go after. All right, we'll take it. Randall Cunningham for offensive coordinator from John. That's crazy. If you want to go after a former Eagles quarterback, I love what Nick Foles said the other day about the Eagles offense. All right, segment number 3 coming up. Top Eagles free agent targets. That'll really set the foundation for this upcoming offseason. A lot of offseason talk. I wish we were talking about a divisional round game, but Kevin Patullo happened again. All right, segment number 3. Let's get into it here. This is Philadelphia Eagles Now. My name is Chase Sr. As always, no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, thank you so much for making today's show a part of your day. And I hope everybody out there is having a fantastic weekend. Coming up here on Eagles Now, we have a great show on tap for all of you. And part of why I love doing this show, I love informing Eagles fans. And that's what we're going to accomplish with today's episode. So we're going to take a gander at the top free agent targets for the Eagles, the best players who the Eagles could target this offseason. Of course, a lot of you are probably wondering, Chase, who are the players on this Eagles roster who are set to be free agents? We got you covered. There are 20 of them. Tight end Dallas Goedert, offensive tackle Fred Johnson, interior offensive lineman Brett Toth, quarterback Sam Howell, edge rusher Josh Uche, edge rusher Azeez Ojulari, long snapper Charlie Hewlett, edge rusher Obu Okoronkwo, running back A.J. Dillon, linebacker Nakobe Dean, pass rusher Jalen Phillips, tight end Grant Calcaterra, wide receiver Jahan Dotson, safety Reed Blankenship, safety Marcus Epps, punter Braden Mann, cornerback Adoree Jackson, defensive end Brandon Graham, tight end Kylan Granson, offensive lineman Matt Pryor. The base salary for all teams across the NFL as of right now, $295.5 million, but that number is going to go up once the NFL generates all of the revenue gained from the 2025 season across the entire NFL. It was another historic one for the league. Philadelphia right now, having not made any moves, they have $20.2 million in cap space. That is 19th among 32 teams. And in the NFL draft, Howie Roseman sitting pretty. Slated to have 8 picks in the 2026 NFL draft. And on the offensive side of the ball, we're going to start off by taking a look at the wide receiver spot. And the big looming question for the Eagles at wide receiver what happens with A.J. Brown? Does he demand a trade? Do the Eagles say, you know what, he's caused so much drama, he's caused so much friction, he's become a distraction, we have to trade him away? A team like the New England Patriots could make a lot of sense. They have a lot of money, and A.J. very tight with Mike Vrabel. A team like the Indianapolis Colts could make a lot of sense. Alec Pierce, set to be a free agent. A.J. Brown put up great production under Shane Steichen in 2022. And I'm not ruling this out. You look at what some of the top Eagles insiders have said. They have said a potential trade is on the table. Now, if that is it for A.J. Brown's Eagles career, that would be very unfortunate because no player has been as productive as A.J. Brown has been in an Eagles uniform. Why? Because no player in the history of this organization, not Harold Carmichael, not Mike Quick, not Terrell Owens, not Deshaun Jackson, not Jeremy Maclin, not Devontae Smith, has had 4 straight years of over 1,000 yards. And in 2022, 2023, 2024, A.J. Brown named an All-Pro. I hope that the Eagles can figure out a way to keep him, and I hope that the Eagles run it back with the new offensive coordinator because I think this offense can be great, but we'll see what happens on that front. If the Eagles do trade away A.J. Brown and they want to go with another option alongside Devontae Smith, that wide receiver, there are some decent wide receivers who are set to be free agents. George Pickens of the Dallas Cowboys, personality-wise, you never know when it's going to go awry, but a really special player who at moments this year, I think was playing better than any wide receiver in the game outside of Jackson Smith and Jigba. I do think the Cowboys are going to put the franchise tag on George Pickens. Mike Evans is older, but prior to this year, every year of his career, he went over 1,000 yards. Deebo Samuel, more of a gadget guy, a little bit older. I wouldn't like him as a scheme fit for the Eagles. Obviously, that's offensive coordinator dependent, but he's one of the bigger names out there. A very underrated player who's still young, who can run well, has really good size. He can go up and get it. He can take the top off of the defense. He's a good route runner. That's Alec Pierce of the Indianapolis Colts. Alongside Devontae Smith, I actually think that he could be a phenomenal fit. Wan'Dale Robinson, another one of those gadget type of wide receivers who this year, I believe, was top 10 in receiving yards. Jawan Jennings, really tough dog of a player for the San Francisco 49ers. Doesn't have a lot of speed. I think he's more suited as a wide receiver 3. Rashid Shaheed is an electrifying player who can take the top off of the defense. Now, he's not going to carve you up as far as the routes that he runs, but you can get very creative with his usage. End arounds, bubble screens, verticals. Romeo Doubs, I think if he goes to another team, when he gets more opportunities, he could be really productive, and he's been a big-time playmaker in big games. Treylon Burks, a former first-round pick for the Titans who didn't work out, but I was impressed with what he did with Washington. I think he got his career back on track. And then Christian Kirk, really good wild card round game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's been a productive player throughout his career. Injuries really concern me. So does the age. And if you were watching Stephen A. Smith the other day, he obviously couldn't get that name right. The real ones know. Howie Roseman, what is he going to do at the wide receiver position? That's a huge question that's hovering over this organization. Usually he has not been in the business of trading away elite players. He has acquired elite players. And A.J. Brown is still one of the best wide receivers in football. And right now he's on a Hall of Fame trajectory. It would take a lot, I believe, for Howie to trade a player of that caliber. Top free agent tight ends. Could the Eagles reunite with a guy in Kyle Pitts who grew up in the Philadelphia area? I guess it wouldn't be a reunion because he's never played with the Eagles. But what I mean by that is that he's a Philly area native. Could he come home, I guess is a better way to put that. Dallas Goedert, probably the second best tight end who's set to hit the free agent market. Isaiah Likely is still a young player who's extremely dynamic. Travis Kelce did say on the New Heights podcast that if his body recovers, he'd like to run it back, but no way I'm signing him. He's way too old. And then David Njoku is a really good athlete at the tight end spot, not an awful blocker. I think that if he goes to a team with good quarterback play that can utilize him, he could have a career year. My favorite players on this list, if you want to retain Dallas Goedert, that'd be great. Although the blocking did dip this year. I don't know why. Maybe he was trying to keep the body right, knowing he was in a contract year. I was disappointed with this blocking, but how the Eagles utilized him, he had an awesome year, 11 touchdowns during the regular season. But Kyle Pitts and Isaiah Likely are very intriguing players. The issue with Pitts is that he is not a blocker. He is pretty much a glorified wide receiver. As an athlete, you see the potential flash. As a blocker, you don't want to turn on the tape. And you don't even want to ask him to do that. But as a weapon on this offense, and maybe if you trade away an A.J. Brown, and you bring in another wideout, and then you have Kyle Pitts as kind of like your wide receiver 3, that's how you could kind of adjust and make some changes while bringing in a marquee player in Kyle Pitts. He started to thrive when Kirk Cousins stepped in for Michael Penix. He's had a weird career because he's so gifted, and at Florida, he was one of my favorite prospects in that draft class. I think he suffered from bad quarterback play, bad coaching. If he goes to the right organization, he's still young, a fascinating player moving ahead in his career. I'd also like to see his effort be a little bit better. Other tight ends here. Chigo Okonkwo of the Tennessee Titans is on that secondary list. Actually had a pretty good year for a bad Tennessee offense with the rookie quarterback. Cade Otton has carved up the Eagles at times with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tyler Higbee, solid player with the Rams. You got Greg Dulcich, who at UCLA, I really liked him, but he's hopped around on a couple of teams. If he goes to a good organization, I think that he can be a good player in the future. And then you have Noah Fant of the Cincinnati Bengals. For Goddard, it's all going to come down to the price tag. Jalen Hurts really likes him. This Eagles organization likes him. He's turned out to be one of the more underrated Eagles in franchise history because he's been such a marquee player in the postseason and such a productive player. And to Kevin Patullo's credit, I actually like how he used Goddard in the red zone. And we got a glimpse of how the new offensive coordinator can use Dallas Goedert in the red area. 60 catches for nearly 600 yards and 11 touchdowns this year. Maybe it's important to bring a player like that back to help out your quarterback in Jalen Hurts. A dream target for me in the NFL draft would be the Eagles trading up for Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon. Excellent athlete. He can pick up yards after the catch. I think that he can be a good blocker. And frankly, I think that he can be a better pro than he was as a college player at Oregon. If the Eagles want to start to rebuild that offensive line, here are the top offensive tackles. Although, if I'm Howie Roseman, I'm not overpaying any of these players. Rob Havenstein of the Rams, good but not great. Rasheed Walker of the Green Bay Packers. Jack Conklin of the Cleveland Browns. Braden Smith of the Colts. Jermaine Illuminor of the New York Giants. At the center position, if the Eagles moved off of Cam Jurgens, by far and away, the best center available is Tyler Linderbaum. But he's going to get between $15 and $20 million per year, and you just paid Cam Jurgens some of the most money of any center in the NFL. Connor McGovern of the Buffalo Bills, Ethan Pocic of the Cleveland Browns, Austin Schlottman of the New York Giants, and Luke Fortner of the New Orleans Saints. Then you pivot to offensive guard. Isaac Seumalo, could the Eagles bring him back? He got a big deal a few years ago from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Joe Bitonio of the Cleveland Browns. David Edwards, Buffalo Bills. Kevin Zeitler of the Tennessee Titans, although he's older. And then Dalton Risner, another older player from the Cincinnati Bengals. That is a look at the top free agents who are going to hit the open market on offense. But I do want to pop up today's poll question. Which free agent do the Eagles need to sign? Who do you absolutely love for Philadelphia? Drop me a name or names down below in the comments section. We'll get to the defense coming up here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. But today's Philadelphia Eagles Now is brought to you by Prize Picks. Whether you're starting a new routine or you're making player picks for the first time, trying something new can be hard. But in life and on Prize Picks, it always feels good to be right. With high-pressure playoff matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every night, the action never stops. And Prize Picks lets you take control. Prize Picks now has early payouts. If your player gets off to a hot start, you now have the option to cash out of those winnings before the game even finishes. You can also find a community on Prize Picks. With the new social feeds feature, you can share Prize Picks with your friends and copy lineups from winners with a single click. Copy lineups you like or use them as inspiration for your own picks. You can even follow Prize Picks partners like us and tail or fade our picks with just one click. Two-pick power play for some playoff action. Josh Allen more than a half rushing or receiving touchdown against Denver, and then Puka Nacua against Chicago more than a half rushing or receiving touchdown. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Top free agent interior defensive lineman, David Onyemata of the Atlanta Falcons, Daquan Jones of the Buffalo Bills, Sheldon Rankins of that fantastic Texans defense. He had that scoop and score in the wild card round against Pittsburgh. Calais Campbell, he's not aging, still playing at a really high level. And then DJ Reader of the Detroit Lions. I'll say this, you'd be hard-pressed to find a team in the NFL that has a better defensive tackle trio than Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, and Moro Ojomo. I was kind of disappointed with how they played against the 49ers, but they're all still young players who are really good, and I don't think the Eagles need to make an external move at defensive tackle. At pass rusher, things get a little bit interesting here. There are some good options. Do you retain a Jalen Phillips? Do you go after a player who's probably at a level higher than Jalen Phillips and Trey Hendrickson, but is also older and coming off an injury? Khalil Mack, will he retire? Does he want to continue to play? Joey Bosa stayed healthy this year for Buffalo, actually played pretty well. And then Boye Mafe of the Seattle Seahawks. That defense is really fun to watch under Mike McDaniel. For Jalen Phillips, his stats with the Eagles in 8 games, he was spectacular. 41 pressures, 32 hurries, 2 sacks, and 7 quarterback hits. So over a full season, he was on pace for like 80-plus pressures and 60-plus hurries. Top free agent corners. You have 2 studs in Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, but the Eagles should probably let Adoree Jackson walk. I think you can upgrade there in the draft or in free agency. Eric Stokes, probably the best free agent corner, and I believe he played his college football at Georgia. Jalen Watson of the Chiefs, a good player. Rasul Douglas, former Eagle. He's pretty physical, especially from the inside, so that can clash with Cooper DeJean. Jamel Dean, good player for the Bucs for a long time. Nishawn Wright, tall and lengthy, and he led the NFL this year in generating turnovers. You have Alontae Taylor of the New Orleans Saints. He's a really good player with high draft pedigree. James Pierre of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Reek Woolen is a player who I think would flourish under Vic Fangio. Asante Samuel Jr., he played well for the Steelers once he was cleared medically. And then the former Eagle Josh Jobe actually turned into an excellent corner for Mike McDaniel this year and Seattle. He could get paid this offseason. What I like about this Eagles secondary, you've got your building blocks there. Quinyon Mitchell, first team All-Pro this year. Didn't have a pick in the regular season. Who cares about picks, right? Then he got 2 against Brock Purdy. He is an excellent player on the outside. Then you have Cooper DeJean, who did say during locker room cleanout day, he'd prefer to stay on the inside because he likes being a factor in the run game. I agree. I want to keep him on the inside because he's the best slot corner in the NFL, and it allows him to impact the game in a variety of ways. To the safety position here, you have Jalen Hawkins of the New England Patriots, Cam Curl of the Los Angeles Rams, Reed Blankenship, Kevin Byard, who's older but was awesome at picking off passes this year, and Brian Cook of the Kansas City Chiefs. You look at this list, and I know some people were down on Reed Blankenship, and yeah, he will get beat at times in coverage, but he's made some big-time plays in some big-time games. He knows this scheme. He's great in the locker room, has a great relationship with Cooper DeJean, exciting whites, exciting Mikes. And you look at that free agent list, it's not like there are safeties who are much better than Reed Blankenship. So do you run it back with him alongside Andrew Makuba? I'm also not a fan of overpaying for safeties. And with Reed Blankenship, I don't think that he's going to break the bank. I don't think that he's going to demand a ton of money. So I'd think about bringing him back. You know who's also going to be a free agent? C.J. Gardner-Johnson, although the Bears have used him a lot as a slot corner. If the Eagles do move off of Jake Elliott, they'd have to eat about $10 million. These are the top free agent kickers. If I'm the Eagles, I would just draft one. Nick Folk is ancient. You're not going to go after him. Eddie Pinheiro, great year for the Niners, only had 1 miss in replacing Jake Moody. Matt Prater, not special at all. Daniel Carlson, good leg, very shaky 2025. Blake Grupe was bad with the Saints, got let go, went to the Colts and actually kicked pretty well. So if you're the Eagles, run it back with Jake Elliott or just draft a kicker late. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button all throughout this Eagles offseason. I have you covered right here on the show with great coverage. All right, MP, $5. Do you think the Eagles can go after some free agent offensive linemen, maybe bring back somebody like Sayamalu, maybe get an Elijah Vera Tucker? So I think you sent that in during that segment, but my thoughts were kind of in that segment on those offensive linemen. I would not overpay for an offensive tackle. If you want to move Landon Dickerson to center and you want to bring back Isaac Sayamalu for a very cheap price, maybe you plug Sayamalu in at left guard. He knows his team very well and thrived under Jeff Stoutland. He got paid handsomely by the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's not going to get that contract again. So, MP, thank you for that. All right, Chip. Do we have enough questions for a mailbag or no? All right, let's just run through those real quick. We don't have to do a mailbag. We'll just run through those questions. I'll take those questions from those of you who did #Eagles or you send in a super chat. Chase, do you want Howie to go get Mekhi Becton? So as part of my perfect offseason plan, if the Eagles want to tinker with or rebuild their offensive line and do it in an affordable way, I think Mekhi Becton, you can swap late round picks with the Chargers and bring him back and pay him $10 million per year. I would make that move. The Chargers, honestly, might even release him. He had a disastrous year with LA, and I think that he would love to come back to the Eagles. That's a player who Howie Roseman should have never let go. Trey Losado, with the schedule that the Eagles have for next year, do you think it's tough or not? As far as the opponents, yeah. I mean, it's a first-place schedule, a lot of really difficult teams. I'll say this, though. Year over year, things really change drastically across the NFL. I know that the Eagles losing to the Niners absolutely sucks. The one thing it does give you, a long off season to rest. This Eagles team seemed tired. They seemed worn down from a physical and mental health standpoint. Andrew Nathan, McDaniel's offenses tend to fall off in December. I would go with Monken or Daboll. Also, I don't know why people want Cliff Kingsbury, zero motion. He runs primarily shotgun. I would stay away from Greg Roman. Please no Greg Roman. His offense's work in the regular season has no playoff success at all. It is so gimmicky. I want to stay far away from Greg Roman. As far as Cliff Kingsbury, I'm with you, Andrew. I've said this on the show. I'm not really a fan of like the Mike Leach air raid offense. I think that's kind of gimmicky too. And I don't like the lack of pre-snap motion in that air raid. The plus, Jalen Hurts did play very well in it when he played for Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma, but Lincoln Riley is so much better than Cliff Kingsbury. And I know that the Commanders last year were like 4th in EPA per play under Cliff Kingsbury, but I just don't love that offense. For McDaniel, I don't think it fits Jalen Hurts at all. And that's why my top choices, Brian Daboll and Todd Monken. Daboll isn't going to run something that's like extravagant, but he's a really good offensive mind. He coached Hurts. He has a relationship with Nick Sirianni. He's been a mentor for Sirianni. They coach with one another with Kansas City back in 2012 before Andy Reid got there. Daboll also coached Saquon Barkley and he coached Devontae Smith. So I love the familiarity component of that. And then Todd Monken had Lamar Jackson win a unanimous MVP in 2023, led the NFL in explosive plays during his entire tenure with Baltimore. And he's like 59 years old. Maybe he could be with the Eagles for a few years. That would be great while still being an elite coordinator. All luck, no skill. Thoughts on a trade up for Caleb Downs? I don't know if you trade up for a safety. I think you trade up for like a Kenyon Sadiq. I think you trade up for an offensive tackle. I think you trade up for a pass rusher. Do you trade up for a safety? He's really good. And he could be the next safety to be with this organization for the next 8 to 10 years. But I don't know if I'd trade up for a safety. Do you see if he could fall to you? Because I think the Eagles are now going to pick like, what, 23rd in the first round, I think? So, really good player. I'd love him for the Eagles. I don't know if I'd trade up, though. Dennis Designs, $20 super chat. What about the guys that Howie just activated? Are they any good? Who he signed? Yeah, I talked about them earlier. My favorite two players are Chance Campbell, the linebacker, who Eagles on the 53rd man roster have raved about with what he did scout team practice squad. And I think Carson Steele is being signed by the Eagles to be their future fullback. I really do believe that. And so he's pretty intriguing there. Really good athlete. Andy Reid utilized him in the backfield as a tight end, out wide, on kickoffs, as a fullback. So Carson Steele is a name to watch. John Galt. Chase, would you consider being the Eagles offensive coordinator? I don't think I would be good as an offensive coordinator. I think I would be better as like a CEO, head coach, or just like in the front office with Howie Roseman. I actually really do enjoy like scouting players, watching players and saying that player's going to be good, that player's not going to be good. I think he works out at the NFL level. I don't think he works out at the NFL level. I'd like to be a part of like a collaborative approach. And I don't have enough offensive acumen, I think, to be a play caller at the NFL level. But for you to think of me in that regard, John, I certainly do appreciate that. All right, we're going to sign off. Thanks to everybody who watched the show. Really good audience. The offseason is here. I'm really excited about it. And there are going to be a lot of juicy storylines around the Eagles here for the next several months. And I have you covered every step of the way. So too does Chip. So for Chip, I'm Chase. For the legends, the real ones, and all of the great people who watch this show, thank you. We love you. We appreciate you. And we'll catch you soon.